who stand in line for many years. They fill out the papers, they pay the fees, they do what they're supposed to do, and they wait for 10, 13, depending on the country. They could wait as many as 20 years. What a slap in the face, not just to those people, but to the very rule of law. And this is a problem that has pretty much been caused by our government. Because imagine a Mexican family sitting across the border, and they know that their government will give them nothing, and they look and they see that, let's say they come to San Francisco, they'll be given an ID card that says they have access to all our city services. You're sitting in Mexico, and you're asked, what can I do for my family? Can I give them a free education, get them free health care? Everything is sitting there right across the border. Our government has caused this problem, and our government has to address it. So again, I think too that if they streamline the laws for legal immigration, we would have a more healthy balance. And also the idea that we have to start expanding the HB1 visas because we want to get skilled workers in this country. And I think we're ignoring them at the behest of people wanting to bring tons of their family members across the border when they're here illegally to begin with. So I think to support the rule of law and also to just stop the flow of money that's going to illegal aliens, we have to not have amnesty, and we have to just enforce the laws we have now, not make new ones that will probably not be enforced either.
I would agree, by the way. We do have to enforce the laws that we have. And one other thing I would mention, I've made a little proposal. You know, many of us have seen that email that's gone around about how LA County jails are filled with illegal immigrants, and a lot of hospital services are consumed by illegal immigrants. Well, I have this idea. I say what we do is let LA County, for example, find out the nation of origin of each of the people, the illegal immigrants that they are giving services to. They should find out what their cost is, add a little premium, and then take the bill and send it to, for example, Mexico. Mexico will stiff them. Now, as I mentioned before, I'm not a big fan of foreign aid, so then I say what we do is we send that invoice over to the State Department, have them pay the bill, and deduct it from the $600 million a year we give to Mexico in foreign aid.
Dana, on earmarks, assuming you oppose earmarks, how would you defend the charge that you have not delivered to your home constituency in San Francisco?
Well, I would think, especially because of the way Nancy delivers, that is a problem. But this is something, again, I think 2010 is a different year. We've all got to hope it's a different year. And I don't think conservatives take to the streets when they aren't serious about changing things. But when I speak to groups, I tell them this is not something that a congressperson or a candidate can do alone. This is something that the American people are going to have to wrap their heads around. They can't have it both ways. So I think this is a message we have to tell. You know, government has responsibilities, and so do citizens. So if they continue to vote for people who just bring home the bacon, we're not going to be able to solve this problem. I'm thinking that this is the year that people are going to start getting it and understand that they're better off being able to have control of their lives and control of their money. So it's a two-way street. That if they're not going to be getting this money coming back to them, hopefully they won't be taking as much money from us. That's what this whole 2010 election's about. And I always tell people, too, 2010 is not the magic bullet. This is going to have to be 2012, 2014, 2016. This is a movement. It's not going to happen overnight. But it does demand that the citizenship of a particular district goes along with this and says, we're going to stop this now. Because keep in mind, it doesn't go to the whole district. It generally goes to well-connected people in the district.
Yeah, the earmark process, of course, is troubling, but it's really only troubling in the sense of the whole appropriations process. You know, earmarks are a very tiny percentage of the budget. And I think people don't understand that if you cut every single earmark, every single one, it would have zero impact on the budget. Because the reason is that if the Congress does not appropriate those funds, it goes to the executive branch. And I think the executive branch in this country is far more powerful than it should be. It's far more powerful, I think, than the framers of this country intended it for it to be. And I think the last thing we want to do is give them more money to run around in the world and do God knows what with. So I think that the whole appropriations process is a problem. The one interesting thing about earmarks, though, it's probably the most open part of the budgeting process. I mean, at least we know where the money goes. So I would say that we need to actually overhaul the entire appropriations process and deal with that. As far as what my constituents might say, I always come back to that terrific quote by Barry Goldwater. And I'm sorry to say that I don't have it memorized. I probably should, considering that his son endorsed me, and it's a connection that I'm proud of in this campaign. But it has to do with, in regards to when people ask me how am I helping the interests of my constituents, I understand that their interest is liberty, and in that regard I'm doing the very best I can. The system that we have is not going to work. No one succeeds if the country collapses through bankruptcy, which in fact we are in right now. So we have to have discipline. We have to have strict constructionist constitutionalists in office fighting unconstitutional spending, no matter where it is.
And again, just to add to that, I can't disagree with that. I also think it's time that we do address the rules that Congress makes for itself, and that we could do things in very simple ways. First and foremost, of course, all the bills have to be read and everything has to be called out. But also, I think it's time that they have each bill be very specific in what it does, that they don't just throw things in to be appropriated that have nothing to do with the bill. So a single issue bills. And this sounds very fanciful, but quite frankly, I think we've reached the point, again, having tried to read the healthcare reform bill and the bills that it refers to, I think we have to make a very serious change in our Congress, because they make rules that we as citizens have to follow. And if we cannot even understand what's in those bills, that is not a way to govern. So I think there are many things that hopefully this new wave of Congress people will start changing the rules and making it so that our government is more accountable to the people.
For John, the Federal Defense of Marriage Act may be coming up for either repeal or renewal. What is your position on this act?
Well, as I've said, I don't think government should be in the marriage business, much less the federal government. I don't see them having any business in it. DOMA is an interesting question. I'm sorry, I have to just throw out one sort of non sequitur. It's sort of related, but you find out interesting things on the campaign trail. One of the things that I found out is that Harvey Milk, of all people, supported Barry Goldwater for president in 1964. It shouldn't surprise us in some ways, though, because the gay community didn't have very much luck with the government back in those days. So, the libertarian elements of Barry Goldwater ought to make sense to some folks. But as I mentioned before, I don't think the federal government has any business being in the marriage business, and as a result, I would support the repeal of DOMA.
It's interesting because this is a very issue close to my heart. I'm an interior designer by profession, and when some people say some of their best friends are gay, the vast majority of my best friends are gay, and we've had some very heated arguments about this, or I should say discussions. And one of the things that I have mentioned to them over and over again, and it seems to be somewhat persuasive, is that I really do think that most of America, certainly most of California, has no interest in keeping gay couples from making committed relationships. They just have to get over the word marriage. And I know they aren't happy with that, but if in fact marriage is defined by, if it is by definition between a man and a woman, they just have to come up with another word for their union. I do think they should have couples that have been together and have made a commitment to each other. I think it's a Republican value that we want them to be committed to each other and responsible to each other. So I just think they have to get over the word marriage because, in fact, in many religions, marriage has a very specific reason, a very specific meaning. And so I think that's one of those issues that is going to only be one in the hearts and minds of people. And I didn't believe in a constitutional amendment about it, like Proposition 8. I just don't think it was appropriate. But I think this is one of the things that must be dealt with in people's hearts and minds. But I also think that some of these social issues are the kind of distractions that the Democrats are going to use against the Republican Party. And I think we have to be very firm that the important issues in this campaign have to do with taking our government back and getting them off our backs.
Yeah, and I would say that that there are a number of rights, a series of rights that committed gay couples forfeit because of their sexuality, their orientation. I think that we have to work to resolve those issues, and the way to do that remains to be seen. I've thought about this. I still don't have a clear definition or answer, frankly, on it, but I'm still open to suggestions. I do want to say that one of those areas that the gays are particularly